Hey folks, welcome to another edition of the Albany Made podcast. In celebration of Pride Month, our own Gillian Freedlander speaks with Library Subject Liason for English Literature, Writing, and Literacy for SUNY Same Berry about the ways in which Sam is facilitating a library collection that is more inclusive and representative of the LGTBQ community, and ways in which non-academic libraries can follow her example. In our second half, Gil and Sam recommend some wonderful and relevant books for you to check out. Please enjoy, and happy Pride.
Today I'm here with Sam Berry, who is one of our temporary library assistants.
Yep, my name is Sam Berry. I am a reference librarian at a local SUNY college, and I am the Library Subject Liason for English Literature, Writing, and Literacy. And so I do a lot of collection development work as part of that, and I'm happy to be here to talk about doing that today.
One of the things we were going to talk about was queering a collection. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means?
When I talk about queering a collection, really in order to talk about that, I kind of just pulled that one strand out of the larger collection development project that I set for myself, which was really fully decolonizing my library collection, queering the collection, and really just trying to make the content of my liaison area as inclusive and representative as possible of the many voices and experiences that comprise the student body of the college that I work at, and also of just the greater world. Certainly, if you are coming to college from this beautiful upstate New York region that we live in, you are also coming to a place of discovering your own identity in a place that is not very diverse, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's very
true.
true.
I found it very incumbent upon me to take on that role of making sure that whatever minority populations existed within my student body, or even just students who didn't necessarily identify within any minority population, if they were curious about a subdivision of, or a different experience, or were learning about a different sexuality for their own edification, or because they had a friend or a family member who had just come out or something like that, I wanted to basically make sure that all of these materials were as available to them as possible. And so that's just what I've been doing. I took a very close look at the collection, saw areas in which I had lots of content missing, doing searches of my collection using different words and identity terms that are used within the queer community, seeing what came up or what more often did not come up in those searches, and filling in those holes in the collection.
What has been the reaction of your student body and the other people at your school as you do this work?
Really fantastic. Far and away from getting pushback. I was recognized by the Faculty Student Association, and I was actually given the Change Agent Award in 2019.
Oh, congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
For my work in attempting to make our library collection considerably more intersectional. I also, when I started working at this college a couple of years ago, started doing displays weekly, which was not being done. So I used that opportunity to highlight the different aspects of the collection that we already had, and then to highlight aspects of the collection that I was newly adding. As every librarian knows, your collection is vast and dense, and only a very small percentage of your patron population is going to know how to search it. So having those displays out there to visually show your patronage what you have and what is new and exciting is how you're going to get books out the door, and how you're going to make people aware that, hey, this collection is changing and evolving to reflect you and your needs in our community. So that has been hugely effective. I had a very touching, deeply rewarding interaction actually with one of our student workers who felt comfortable enough with me because of the language that I use when I'm at work, and the way that I comport myself, and the way that I just openly and comfortably discuss queerness and working to increase inclusion and diversity on our campus, and the way that I've worked to make our collection more diverse. She felt comfortable enough to confide in me that she considered herself asexual and was coming into that identity and kind of exploring it. And so I was then, and this is the whole point of trying to queer my collection, I was then immediately able to be like, oh, I have some books from our collection. I can run up and grab for you right now. Her eyes just went big and a flush came to her cheeks and she was like, are you serious? She apparently was a page at Saratoga Springs Public Library and she's like, I searched that library for resources. I've tried to find things online and there really isn't a ton, but I was able to, from my dedicated efforts, find her several nonfiction works about the experience of asexuality and how it has been treated by the queer community and things like that for her to take a look at. And she said they were extremely eye-opening and deeply affirming for her.
It's why we do the work we do.
It's why we do the work.
Yeah.
It's why we do the work. It felt so good for her to come back after reading those and talk to me about all the things she found exciting and the ways that she feels more affirmed and confident in her identity. And that's it. That's truly, why you do it. That's why you do it. I've had a beautiful experience on my campus.
Do you do any work with professors on your campus to help them do such work in their curriculums?
Faculty at colleges are a tricky and fickle bunch, as much as they are also incredibly intelligent and unbelievably talented folks. They do not like being told what to do. They really just want complete freedom, and they have all fought for that, and they have their union for a reason, and I completely, fully respect that. Yeah. So I have not, that I know of, succeeded in suggesting a book or several books and having them added to any faculty member's curriculum necessarily, but I do send out regular email blasts when I add a lot of new things to the collection, or if I find that I'm getting a lot of questions from students that are around a certain topic or a lot of apparent interest in one of the topic areas that I've added to the collection, I will shout out to faculty members within the English division to make you aware that we have, this list of books treating that topic available, this beautiful new collection of queer literary theory, that we have this wonderful new queer disabled story anthology. I just make them aware as much as possible about what's available, and they do the rest. Otherwise, I just have displays, and as long as the students are getting the nourishment that they need out of the collection, that's the important thing.
From a public library point of view, how do we go about doing this? Because we have a pretty strong LGBT collection, but there's a lot missing, which I've found just from doing my own searches and helping people find things. How do we do this from a non-academic point of view?
In an academic library, the collection development takes place when you examine the needs of your student body and directly in relation to their studies, and you look at the faculty, you look at the courses that they're teaching in a particular semester, and see if there are ways that you can supplement what they have assigned already and the different projects that they're going to assign. Can you supplement and complement the work that they're having their students do to enrich that experience for their students? But also, because I am the English and literature liaison, I can kind of do collection development the way that a public librarian could, because I am purchasing fiction. So in much the same way that I was able to, as you just mentioned, do searches for things that I was interested in or a reference question was interested in, and I found gaps, I was then able to, as a collection development department of one, kind of just jump on Goodreads for some reviews, jump into some of our academic databases for some reviews, make sure it's going to be good for our collection, and then just kind of put the order in for a particular book or set of books. Right. So in the public librarian case, I feel like you could do much the same thing. When you recognize those gaps, keep notes of those gaps and send an email or share a Google Doc or a Google Sheet with your collection development department and say, hey, either as a queer person, a member of our local queer community who I know is personally interested in these topics, here are some books that I would recommend for us to have, or here's some patrons. There are definitely patrons who are members of these communities. Here's some books that they were looking for. Consider adding these to the collection. Another way that I would recommend doing collection development, which is, again, the way that I often do it, is as a queer person, I try to be as plugged into our community as possible. So I'm following all sorts of queer writers and speakers and thinkers and activists on all my social media. I check in on different blogs and LGBTQ news sites and things like that. and I keep tabs on what books they're recommending, what writers are being highlighted, what poets, what artists are being uplifted on these different platforms, and I check out their work to see what I feel like I should incorporate. And doing it that way, especially the kind of more grassroots way of looking at these social media posts and looking what these different activists are uplifting, is definitely an excellent way to get some more of those small press items into your collection, so you kind of aren't only supporting those writers who were privileged enough to be able to afford the big agent and the big book deal. You're getting a lot of those queer people who maybe just started writing and creating their own zines, but finally were able to get money enough to get together with a small press, so you're still able to make those works visible and those works accessible as well. And because, as we kind of talked about at the very beginning, what the real spirit of Pride is, and how Pride started as such a rebellious act, I think it's important to make sure that those voices that are more difficult to be heard and recognized are uplifted as much as possible and put into the public view as much as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of our bigger name publishers are publishing white queer books.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, to get that diversity in is,
There's been a huge influx in a lot of those queer white voices, which is great, but
it is, like representation, it's important, but we're missing so many voices when we don't move past that. As you do this work and as your collection gets more and more diverse, what are your goals for it? Like, where do you want to see it going?
I think the goal and the work are one in this case.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense, yeah.
The goal when I first joined the library that I work with in 2017, early 2017, was to radically increase the diversity of the voices represented, and I can comfortably say that in 2020 I have achieved that goal.
Nice.
So the goal from now on, for as long as I keep working at this college, and I hope that's forever, honestly, because it's a wonderful workplace.
Yeah.
Fantastic students, excellent environment, very supportive of minority voices. Total lack of pushback I had when I started developing the collection in this way. The goal is to maintain. The goal is to respond to community needs.
Yeah.
And just keep the collection up to the degree of diversity that I have gotten it to, and make sure that I'm always continuing to weed and keep it fresh and remove voices that maybe were at one time celebrated and now we are kind of moving in a different direction as a community.
Yeah,
reacting to the ways that that queer people around the world and that queer Americans are engaging with their identity. Just being aware of all of these things and developing the collection in tandem with that awareness.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I cannot say enough how important being seen is, and how important representation in our media is. I don't specifically go out to consume queer literature all the time. I like horror, I like high fantasy, and I like sci-fi. And certainly in sci-fi you'll see queerness and questions of identity and intersectionality treated a lot more than those other areas. When I did, in the course of my collection development, make a point to start reading more queer literature, just the extreme, deep sense of almost that feeling of relief, almost, when you are reading queer literature and see yourself,
it matters.
Characters accurately.
It makes a really big difference.
Yeah, for often the first time in your life.
Yep.
And it was, for me, it feels, and we've talked about how it is completely pointless to compare states of oppression and who is more oppressed than who, whatever. But certainly as a white cisgender woman in a straight passing relationship, I'm not experiencing the degree of erasure that so many members of the queer community are, and so many members of our society are. But so getting to read about women, loving people of all genders in my sci-fi books, in my horror novels, in, whatever I'm reading, is so incredibly affirming.
Yeah.
And so everybody deserves to feel that way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's super valuable.
I feel like the phrase representation is important has been getting tossed off a lot, especially in higher education. You know, diversity, equity, inclusion, representation is important are buzz terms that have been being tossed around for the last couple of years, and they're like the themes of the conferences and whatnot.
Yeah.
But unless you are a member of these communities and have felt that particular feeling, you don't really know how important it is. It doesn't matter how big the world has gotten, and certainly it's gotten easier to connect with other people who are feeling the way you're feeling and changing the way you're changing as a young person, but everybody starts that journey and spends a proportionate amount of time of that journey feeling isolated, feeling like I'm the only one who's ever felt this way.
Yep.
I'm a freak. Something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anybody like me in my books, media, TV, radio, etc. You know, that's why we do the work. You know, that student who came to me and said, I think that I'm asexual, and I was able to give her physical printed material that proves that other people like her exist, and that they're living.
That's why it matters.
Fulfilling lives, that they're publishing, that they're out there thriving.
Yep.
That's the whole point. It's so critically important.
I think our LGBT media has started to move from these very sad stories of queer people towards just putting characters into worlds and them just doing their thing and just living their lives, which I think is equally valuable, so that when you read the things, it's not just, well, my life is going to be miserable and horrible things are going to happen, but like I'm
gay, so I'm doomed.
Yeah, I'm gonna die, or my family's gonna kick me out. Like, and those are like the realities of our community. But I think it's just as important to see queer people just living regular lives and doing regular things that people do because you're a human being and that's what you do.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's just so important. And it's been a really
so glad that you brought that up.
Really big shift.
Something I was thinking about before I jumped on to the meeting. That I've seen that shift taking place also, and I'm so relieved.
Yeah, it's like it's super sad to just constantly watch queer characters die or not be able to figure themselves out. And I think like growing up with that and like reading all of that materials can give you a really depressing outlook of your community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And lest we forget that, you know, the LGBTQ people, unfortunately, make up a decent chunk of the percentage of Americans who die by suicide and people around the world who die by suicide. Having positive representation and not this, you know, tragedy porn is incredibly important. If you grow up in all of the media representation that shows people feeling the way that you're feeling, identifying the way that you identify, is people dying, people in abusive relationships, people not able to find relationships of substance, which is unfortunately what you see so much in male gay literature and media, is that kind of that hookup culture and just those very cursory, shallow interactions. And not finding mutual love and supportive relationships, or as you're saying, you're not even able to find media that shows people like you just existing. Just give me a side character who like kind of enjoys their job and just has a girlfriend who they've been living with for the last 10 years. Yeah, they're planning on getting married, and like they don't even need to be the main characters. Just like give me somebody living. Yeah,
like not getting hit by a car or dying of cancer would be nice.
Yeah.
Or AIDS, yeah. Like I'm not like I'm only 25, and the gay media that I had exposed to as a teenager, everybody died. Like that's what we came up, and like only very recently has that changed.
The gay representation that I saw was either making homosexuality a joke, making queerness the queer character is the comic relief.
Yep.
And or they get beaten up or die. Or they just die, and then that's the impetus for, you know, the heterosexual, non-queer friend group to come together and change to take place in a community and whatever. Like the death the death of queer people needs to become is the catalyst for the rest of the movie's action or something like that. Like, no, I don't want to be a dead body that starts off the action. I want to be seen. I want to be see me living.
Yeah, like an alive human being. Yeah.
Yes. So, yes, we've had such a serious, magnificent uptick in positive representation in all of our media. We're far from perfect, certainly far from the level of representation that even we should have, and the type of representation we should have, because again, we are seeing a lot more queer representation, but we're not necessarily seeing queer disabled representation. We're not seeing queer Latinx representation. Yeah. We're not seeing, et cetera, et cetera. We're not seeing the intersectionality that we need to be seeing.
Yep.
We're seeing a lot of white cis homosexuality and queerness.
Yeah.
But it's a step in the right direction. It is.
Yeah.
And we just got to keep
working. Small steps, yeah.
Making those small steps, keep uplifting those intersectional voices in any small way that we can. We have to use our privilege to uplift the other members of our community that we want to see living and shining and all of that. So a couple of recommendations. This one I actually did read because it falls within my preferred genres. I had a queer black student at the college specifically asking for zombie fiction. So I went out and I found as much new and as intersectional as possible zombie genre fiction that I could, and I found this absolute gem that I'm salivating, waiting for the next installments to come out. Waiting so hard.
Yeah.
This book is entitled Dread Nation by Justina Ireland.
I've read that.
Published in 2018. You read that?
It was so good.
Oh, good.
I devoured it. Yeah.
So a young black woman in this alternate United States in which the Civil War was interrupted by the zombie plague beginning. So it's a sort of historical fiction, zombie genre fiction novel.
Really clever premise. Like, you don't normally...
Oh, clever.
Yeah, like a very different take on zombies, which was super cool.
Yes, and like, I also love historical fiction. So I mean, it's even more rich when you have somebody who can like take and twist a historical period to weave their sci-fi and their horror into. So good. So potentially, I'm pretty sure she could easily be called bisexual, but the main character is a young black woman named Jane McKean, who was trained to be a lady in waiting, but a very special type of lady in waiting for the white elite of this dread nation, zombie-affected United States. She is to be a protector from zombies of the upper classes. And this book is all about the chaos of, the chaos of a country, an antebellum country destroyed by zombies, taken over by zombies. It's action-packed. It's absolutely fantastic. There are moments of funniness. There are moments of wonderful action. There's romance. It's got it all. It's truly got it all.
And she's writing a second one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's going to be a series.
Yes. I'm very excited.
Another one that I found is called Let's Talk About Love. And it is a black woman discovering and coming into the realization that she is asexual and the challenges of dating while asexual and black.
That sounds
it does
excellent.
have a happy ending.
So rare.
So I recommend that one. So that one is by Claire Kahn. Let's Talk About Love by Claire Kahn.
Nice.
There's a beautiful black woman on the cover rocking a beautiful, big, gorgeous, natural hair afro. Like, loving the representation there.
That's awesome.
What else? And I'll plug some poetry. How about that?
Yes.
I'm gonna plug Nature Poem by Tommy Pico, who is a queer Indigenous writer,
Nice.
and also one of the hosts of the queer comedy podcast Food for Thought, THOT.
That's amazing.
It's hilarious. It is definitely not safe for work.
No,
podcast.
That's
but
fantastic.
The poem is incredibly powerful and is Tommy Pico's response to the stereotyping that Native and Indigenous populations go through, wherein they're expected to be more connected to the earth. And if you're an Indigenous poet or an Indigenous media maker of any kind, then shouldn't you be being more Native, and all of your work should be about your connection to the earth and saving the earth and green values and things like that. Like, obviously you don't have any other, it's such a very small, narrow view of
you're not a full human. Yeah.
So Nature Poem is his big, F you to the world, basically.
That's amazing.
Of, I am so much more than your tiny, narrow stereotypes of what Indigenous culture is, but I'm also Indigenous, and here's what that really means. So Nature Poem by Tommy Pico. I think that was I want to say that was either a 2016 or 2017 publication. Maybe just as a final recommendation, I will recommend the book Little Fish.
I've been trying to get my hands on that book for months, and APL does not have it.
Well, if we were... Little Fish by Casey Platt.
Yeah. I have to buy it at this point.
We don't have it on, like, Hoopla or Overdrive or any of those?
No. I actually looked again last night to think maybe it magically showed up.
Well, they have it at my college library, and if only Interlibrary Loan was available.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But Little Fish is a story, and this is one I actually did read. Little Fish is definitely a challenging read if you're somebody who is a little bit more uncomfortable with, like, highly sexual content, because it discusses the reality of life for very many trans people. Many trans and queer people engage in sex work in order to survive. Often, and especially trans folk, because of just the way that they are actually tangibly excluded from so much other work that affirms their identity or allows them to work in a traditional workplace, while fully embodying their true identity. So they turn to sex work to support themselves. So it discusses, it follows a young woman doing sex work, the dangers therein, but also discovering that her great-grandfather may have also been homosexual, and kind of doing some genealogical sleuthing to find this connection to a member of her family who she always considered so conservative and was so sure would reject her and her identity and things like that. So it's an eye-opening and a little bit of a rough read, but very, very worth it. Ooh, this one is nonfiction.
Oh, that would be a good one, yeah.
This is a nonfiction book that I read that is so awesome, and I'm so glad I read it. Real Queer America, LGBT Stories from Red States.
Oh, that sounds excellent.
By Samantha Allen, who is a trans woman. She, I believe, if I'm remembering from my read, which was last year, I believe was, born into the Mormon faith in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah. After much struggle and soul searching, realized, okay, I'm a woman, I need to leave my community, and I'm going to be excommunicated from my church, and I need to go and discover myself and come into my true self. So this is her story as somebody who then became, I believe she's a journalist. So this is her journalistic, semi-autobiographical journey through red states in the United States, and finding the centers of queer culture, those oases, in in all of these areas to show how queer culture is still thriving, even in those states that we think of as, hardline red, white, racist, small-minded areas. There's queer culture flowering up everywhere. And so this is a really beautiful glimpse into those really tight-knit, supportive, insular queer communities in those more red states.
That sounds really good.
Real Queer America by Samantha Allen.
Awesome.
The Albany Made podcast is a production of Albany Public Library in Albany, New York. Produced by Ryan Slowey and Stephanie Simon. Today's music provided by Present Self, Future Self. To hear more, visit psfs.bandcamp.com. You can find more episodes on SoundCloud, iTunes, and other podcast apps. You can also listen on YouTube at Albany NY Library and on our website, albanypubliclibrary.org.